Looks like we are live. All right. Well, we'll get started with our meeting for tonight, December 7th, but I do want to just make a quick comment before we get into roll call here. So just a warm welcome to our special guest from our city, Mr. Joe Vunich, Director Joe Vunich, who usually doesn't sit in on our admin and public works meetings. So it is just so great to see Joe here tonight with us. And I think with that, we'll get started. So are you doing roll call or is that Rick?
Mr. Chair, I'll be doing roll call for you.
You do it all.
Mr. Chair, I'll proceed with your permission.
Yes, please. Sure.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Councilmember Edens.
Covered up the mute button on my window. Yes, I'm here.
Councilmember Nyan.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Katie, we can't hear you.
Okay, Joe cut out. So yes, I'm here. I didn't hear my name. Sorry.
My apologies, ma'am. Councilmember Bertolino.
Here.
Councilmember Rambo.
Here.
Councilmember Hopper.
Here.
And Chair Garitano.
All right, Pierre, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that roll call. So I did see Councilmember Clark before in the attendee, but she seems to have gone offline. So she's always welcome to also join the panelists. So if she does come back, we'll ask her if she wants to. So next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. So can I get a motion for the approval of the minutes from the October 26th meeting? Seeing Councilmember Gross and seconded by Councilmember Hopper. Any questions or comments on the minutes there before we approve them? All right. Seeing none, then all those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Anyone oppose? Any oppose or abstain?
It's not necessarily a correction, but I did have a question about the minutes.
So not to impact then approval because we just voted, of course. So go ahead with your comment.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that that it was accurate that we had a formal vote on how we would proceed with the training, the HR training, but that's what's in the minutes. So
let me double check that here.
I thought it was a discussion. I didn't think that we decided for sure just to proceed on our own. But if that's how you guys remember it, but I didn't think that was the case.
Well, let's see. Are you just making a comment, or because we did already approve the minutes?
Mm-hmm.
So it's we'd have to redo the motion. Let me just find it and see if I can give you an answer here.
Yeah, because there's no vote recorded, so I thought that it was still up for discussion.
There was no action taken. It was listed under for action, but there was nobody. I don't think we had any motion or action to be taken. So, okay. All righty. Well, we will get into public participation. So do we have any member from the public? I do only see one member in the attendee list. That is the next item on the agenda. So we don't see any here, so we'll continue to proceed. Under administration, we do not have any for information items. So we do have one for action item, and this is an item returning back to this committee here, where we had left off last regarding the topic of a lobbyist to determine who would be presented to this committee here for them to be able to speak and introduce themselves. And then we do have a for action item here as well. So therefore, we will bring in Mr. Silverman as a panelist so that he can introduce you to Olympus Political Consulting and be able to make his presentation. And then we'll open up if you have any questions of Mr. Silverman. And then at that point, we'll release Mr. Silverman back as an attendee. All right, Mr. Silverman, can you hear us?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, well then the floor is going to be yours, and please go ahead and make your presentation to the committee here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much to the committee for having me. My name is Jake Silverman. I am the president of Olympus Political Consulting, a lobbying firm here in Missouri. I also do a little bit of work in DC, but it's more like one-off projects. I have been in politics since 2009, getting my start on political campaigns. I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to have my first legislative experience in Washington, DC. From there, I ended up going to law school from 2012 to 2015. And once I graduated in 2015, I came back to Missouri. I was actually living in North Carolina and going to school out there. When I came back, the saying goes, once you're in politics, you're kind of stuck. So I ended up being hired as the political director for Catherine Hanaway when she ran for governor, and then the political director for Eric Schmidt when he ran for treasurer. And he is now currently our attorney general running for U.S. Senate. My first legislative experience in Missouri was actually with the Missouri Roofers Association as their executive director in 2017. I was there for a year, and then in 2018, I got asked to run several different campaigns, some statewide, some local. And so I decided to create my own company with the hopes of creating it or turning it into a lobbying firm. In 2019, I was hired by another lobbying firm as a contract lobbyist, where I got the experience to work with many different industries, education, energy, gaming, insurance, and the list goes on. From there, I ended up going back into business for myself in 2020, where I started up the lobbying side of my company, where I was fortunate enough to start working with the Missouri Electric Restructure Association, Commercial Energy Consultants, Missouri Prosper, Gillespie and Powers, so manufacturing. So it's kind of a small, wide range, I guess you could say, of different industries. So it's been a great experience so far. I'm very proud of the growth my company has made in this short period of time, and adding the city of Wildwood, a place where I grew up, would be extremely special to me. So just briefly, I just want to talk about what my company provides. One, relationships. Relationships are extremely key. And, I've built relationships through the campaign cycle, through lobbying for many years. And those relationships are the city's relationships as well. So when I talk to a certain senator or a certain representative, I am speaking on behalf of Wildwood, but I'm also going to introduce you to those members as well. I think it's important for them to understand the issues Wildwood has. And obviously I get to speak on it as well, but I mean, who knows it better than the city council themselves? Second, you get my focus. I am, as I've said, I don't have a large list of clients, so it allows me the opportunity to actually focus on my clients that I do have, and the city of Wildwood would have my utmost focus, and it would be something that I'd be very proud of and proud to focus on. Lastly is communication and reporting. I am, I guess you could say, maybe an over communicator, and I think that is beneficial to my clients. There is not a time that, very rarely will you find a time that I'm not willing to answer my phone, answer my email, or a text message. The reason is this company is very important to me. It is my baby. So the only way my company can grow and succeed is by focusing on my clients and having happy clients. So if I'm fortunate enough to have the city as a client, The communication, you will not miss me on a communication. That's for sure. And lastly is I make sure that we do some consistent reporting. Reporting is very key. It's important for the city to know what is going on in the legislature, but I also like to do weekly calls if the city is okay with that. The reason being, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. You might get a committee vote, that's in favor of our piece of legislation that we're working on. However, just because somebody votes for it in committee doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to vote for it on the floor. And those are things that I like to keep the city apprised of, or my clients apprised of, because I think it's very important that that background information. So, those are some things that are very important to me. I've had some great successes in my time in the legislature, but I've also, I've had some shortcomings, and I see them as learning experiences. And I look forward to working with the city of Wildwood if you guys will have me. And it's that's all I have. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Silverman, for sharing more about yourself here with our committee here. So I will ask of the committee if anyone has a question that they would like to ask Mr. Silverman to please raise your hand. All right. I got Councilmember Brost here.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, and it's okay if you don't know the answer, but if we were to engage you, what would be the first thing you would do for Wildwood?
Well, I was fortunate enough to go on the city's website and look at some of the issues that are important to the city. One thing would be the watershed erosion. I watched the task force, and one thing that came up that I kept hearing in the conversation was capital. One of the first things I would do would be to go talk to Chairman Cody Smith. He is head of budget and appropriations, and I would talk to him about providing money to the city. It's a serious issue from my understanding, and that would be one of the first things that I focus on. Another thing is I know that there's been an issue with the roundabouts on 109. Talking to MoDOT and seeing what's available for the city as well. So those are some of the main issues. But of course, there's going to be many issues that come along, and I have no problem going to any member and letting them know what needs to get done.
All right, Councilmember Brost, do you have any follow-up, or are you okay with that?
Well, the only thing I would add to it is that I guess the first thing that I would probably do is, I think you hit on big issues, but I think the first thing I would do is make sure that I fully understand that issue before I would go out and talk to anybody. Absolutely, council member. And what I would say is, one thing that I actually do when I onboard a client is I send a bunch of the pre-filed legislation to you to let you see what is already out there, so I can get your, I guess I would assume the city votes on it as a whole, what they support and what they don't support. And then on top of that, if there are issues that are important to you or important to the city as a whole, we make sure that we either have a bill that is ready for that. And I completely agree with you. You have to understand the material. You have to understand what the bill does. I learned this with the electric issue. Trying to increase choice for electric providers for commercial and industrial here in the state. I will be the first to admit, I did not know anything about electric until I onboarded my client and we discussed the issues. And now I would say I could discuss electricity to a probably 85% of the importance of it. So understanding the issues is one of the biggest keys, I think, as a lobbyist in general. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I have Councilmember Bertolino with his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Jake, for coming on and talking with us tonight. A couple of fairly pointed questions. Number one is that the city has a very good working relationship with the representatives and senator who represent our area. We're on first name basis with Schatz and the group and Dugan and Bailey and so on. Our mayor can pick up the phone and get any one of those folks on the line at any time. We also have the Municipal League, which we participate in. We have the president of the State Municipal League sitting right up here talking with us. What can you do, Jake, as an individual that would enhance or supplement that kind of input? And more specifically, how do you go about it? Because do you spend a lot of time in Jeff City, or is it mostly by fax or by phone, social media, etc.?
No, I spend 100% of my time during session in Jeff City. I actually live down there. And with regards to the question about our current legislators, I have run Dottie Bailey's campaign. So I have a very good relationship with her. I have golfed with Senator Schatz. I have a great relationship with Senator Koenig. I've actually thrown a fundraiser for him on his last election. So there is not one legislator that represents Wildwood that I do not have a great relationship with, and that's something I've built up over time. And so that's obviously extremely important. But yes, I stay out there consistently. And I think it's important for when I go to events or I put on events with maybe other clients, let's say the Missouri Electric Restructure Association, to invite the city as well to attend and see what legislators they can talk to and create those introductions for ones that you don't have.
Thank you, Jake.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Dodwell has her hand up. Go ahead.
Evening, Jake. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
Okay, this is always a fun position to be in where you're getting 22 questions and none of us. I wanted to touch base with you on the methodology or the steps you might go through. If we asked you, obviously our watershed's a major problem for us. We haven't been getting good response from MSD. How would you work with our state legislators and MSD to get MSD to come and talk with us, work with us, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I would use my relationships with, first of all, Senator Schatz. I mean, leadership is key in this instance. He does have one more year left before he officially goes all in on the U.S. Senate race. But using that pressure, obviously reaching out to MSD, but also talking to Cody Smith is extremely important. When it's in the budget, that kind of helps. That kind of helps with some of the issues that we're seeing with the watershed erosion. So reaching out to them, sitting down and having a meeting, and honestly, probably bringing both of them together. Nothing is more enticing when leadership themselves are asking for some help. So I think that's probably where I would start with this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Silverman?
Oh, what?
We have, Mr. Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, just an obvious question, I guess, Jake. Do you have any other municipalities within St. Louis County that you represent?
No, and like I said in my first interview in this process, I actually put out a conflict of interest statement that I will not take any other municipality in the whole state. My focus is the city, and I grew up here. I'm proud to have grown up here. I lived in Point Clayton subdivision, and it would be something that's really important to me. So I'd be proud to not take any other municipality. So and I have worked with municipalities in the past. So I've worked with Cole County, I've worked with the city of Arnold, and I've worked with Jefferson County at the last firm I was with.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Silverman? Councilmember Dodwell, you have your hand up.
Do you have any questions for us?
Well, I mean, I guess this would the main question would be how the process. So, with a county, let's say Cole County, there was 3 commissioners. I don't know how the city, you guys handled the legislative side on the processing of whether you support or oppose a bill. Would that be a city vote as a whole, or is that done by just the admin PW committee? Or
It's okay. You want me to go ahead and answer that, or Councilmember?
I was just going to say real quickly that I think we do a little bit of both right now. Our past experiences with individuals such as yourself in state legislature have not been as communicative, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And so I kind of wanted to understand a little bit better how you would make sure that we're knowing what's going on in the state legislation, and then be able to communicate that back. But then you made the comment earlier that you like to do weekly meetings with members of the council, or so such and such. So
I hope by the end you get annoyed with me. That's my goal, is by the end you're like, okay, we get it. But I think it's better to be over communicative than under, I guess you could say. I've been in situations where we have had clients that haven't received enough updates, and it doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do me any good. So I think over communication is the best route. And if at some point you guys are tired of hearing me, then I'll let you handle that. But no, I stress the communication side a lot.
okay.
And if I could just add on to that, a good question there, and Councilmember Dodwell too, good answer. So just to paint the picture a little bit for you of our city. So we are members of the St. Louis County Municipal League, which meets monthly, and also, as was mentioned, the state Missouri Municipal League. So where we have issues in common with our peer municipalities, which often there's a good number of them where we're all in the same boat, we certainly leverage the power of these 2 organizations to speak on behalf of us and everyone else. That's the benefit of being a member of these organizations. But I see you as coming into for very targeted reasons, unique issues that affect Wildwood solely. Like, as you mentioned, the watershed erosion, there's probably no one out there besides Wildwood talking about watershed erosion. And so therefore, the leagues that we rely on, that may not be their top issue, but that's where we need that voice, that advocate. I see this really as an advocacy role for the city, with those people that you mentioned that have power, and those that know that when they're talking about basically funding, and I understand there are going to be 2 separate budgets this year because of the extra money that's coming in from the federal government. I really want them, when they're figuring out that discretionary funding, like, to remember, Wildwood, that's got to be up at the top of their mind. Mm-hmm. And so I need you, and I think my peers would agree, we need you to be at that forefront, to be able to be there and just constantly keep hammering away that message that, Wildwood has these needs. And so you heard about erosion and internet and MoDOT. Those are all places where we do need help, because there are more state, opportunities to help us there. So I think that's where I wanted to just follow up more on that answer, just to pull that thread a little bit further for Councilmember Dodwell, that you're coming in really targeted there. But, I did have just one question too of you, in the working relationship. And I share this more from my experience in working with folks in a role like you, being that advocate that you are for us at the state. And, you know, the way that committee hearings get scheduled pretty much within 24 hours, you know, that's where I see a huge need for you to represent us, because we may not be able to be there and drive that 2 hours to get to the Capitol and be able to do that. But I think that's the key thing, is that communication, the back and forth that we'll need there.
Absolutely. And I will be living 5 minutes away from the Capitol, from my understanding.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Edens, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, let me put my hand down. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, my laptop fan kicked on, and sometimes when that happens, I'm like the Peanuts parent, wah, 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 and the Charlie Brown. Okay. But anyway, I think one of the issues that Mr. Silverman would have if he works for us is, to build on what Councilmember Dodwell says, is we really don't have a department that's handled this before. So there's not a great reporting structure or procedure for how we support things or what you do with the information. But on the plus side is that would allow you to help shape our department, essentially, with dealing with that. It would allow you to kind of create a smooth procedure and give us much needed advice. I mean, there's not, other than the MML, there hasn't been anybody at the helm. So I think you're building the ship, not just trying to get it out of the dock, which is a little harder to do. And
I've been there before too.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. You're kind of doing it all. And then I think the other thing too is exactly what, Councilmember Garitano said, is that while reporting back is great because we already do have an MML lobbyist, it's really about how you can file legislation that helps us and how you can build connections with like-minded individuals. So if it's, rural internet funding, it's meeting with other rural communities that we wouldn't really come into contact with, maybe to kind of build a voting coalition and things like that. And that's really something that you can kind of only do if you're on the ground there in Jeff City. But if there's not a great procedure, it's because there hasn't been one at all. So
hey, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
I mean, it's, but that's I completely agree with you, and that's why I think it's so important for somebody to be there consistently, because when we spoke at our first meeting, I said, or our first interview, I said, the saying I've heard is, if you're not at the table, you're the meal. And the truth is a lot of, as Councilmember Garitano said, it's sometimes people forget about, it's like, Wildwood, yeah, they've got staff, but there's priorities that will, they have their certain priorities. My priority is the city of Wildwood and what the city of Wildwood wants. So it's important to reach out to whoever I have to make sure that they know that Wildwood should be a priority. And I've built the relationships over time that allowed me that opportunity. So I'm excited.
All right, great. Well, I don't see any other hands up at this point. So is there anything else, Mr. Silverman, that you wish to say, or are you feel you've covered it all?
Yeah, I just want to thank you again. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, I grew up here. It would mean a lot for me, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for making the time to join us tonight and present yourself. So at this point, then we're gonna release you, but appreciate you coming again to talk with us tonight. So what the committee will be doing is, we do have it listed as a 4 action items. So what we would like to see is whether we continue to move this forward to the council at this point. And so it would be certainly a discussion right now for the committee as far as whether we move forward with Mr. Silverman to present it to the council, and certainly for the city administrator who's not able to be here tonight to work with our city attorney as far as what the arrangement will be if that comes to the council, and then the council can determine that at that point to approve of it or not. So so that's what I would like to have discussion there at this point right now. So Mr. Silverman, at this point right now, I don't expect you to have any additional comments. There'll be discussion for the committee. So Rick, if you can put Mr. Silverman back to where he was. Thanks again so much. And we'll have a conversation here with the committee here. Now, Councilmember Edens, I did check into a question you had if we were going to have an executive closed session. I did speak with the city attorney. Since this is not an employee related matter and we're not talking about specific contract details, we don't have any reason to be able to go into executive closed session. So at this point, this would be like any kind of contractual matter, like we do with other services for the city where we do discuss them. But I think when it goes to council, that question could be asked again of the city attorney. And I think when we're talking about the specifics of the contract, then he said that's a reason, a justification.
Yeah, I am not comfortable with any sort of final vote without a closed session. There was some stuff I wanted to share from the closed. It just puts anybody in a really awkward position to share any positives or negatives, because I wanted to talk about how this bid compared to another one in terms of dollars, staffing difference. And, it just doesn't feel appropriate for me to say anything.
At this point, Mr. Silverman is the only person on the agenda. So therefore, that's why the recommendation would be, so whether it would be whether you vote in support of moving it forward or not.
Right. But I wanted to kind of talk to the committee about some of the stuff that was in a closed discussion first. And I think it would be contractual. One of the things he didn't mention recently, but I don't know if I can mention it, but it would, because he mentioned it in closed session and it is related to contract, and it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to share with the committee. I just don't know if I can say it right now. And
Can not a council member ask for a closed session on a topic at any point?
We have to have one of the reasons that allows us to have closed session. Otherwise, we have to conduct the business, for the public. So the reasons that allow us to go into closed session are matters pertaining to employee personnel, which would not apply in this case. Mm-hmm. And okay. We're not talking about details of a contract at this point. We're not yet at this point.
Well,
so
I would like to, because it related to conflict of interest, and it was a good thing, but it's something he told us in closed session that relates to the political side of his campaign.
Yeah, I think
I can't say it.
Would be at this point, if you feel like you can't say it, what I would say is save it for when we do talk about a contract at the council level. So at this point right now, it's whether or not we are comfortable to move forward to recommending this to the council. And you certainly have your right to, otherwise we won't be able to talk about it at council if we can't get past this point. So let me see what other comments I have. I have a couple of hands.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? Am I allowed to make any comments about the RFP, because the RFP was closed session?
The RFP is available to, I believe, to be discussed if that's what you want to share about.
Because it wasn't provided on the attachment, so nobody's seen it. So I didn't know if I could say anything about it.
I think that is, we don't have our city attorney or city administrator, but when we do RFQs, maybe do we have that information before available, like with other matters for our director of planning or director of public works, or those documents closed? I think they're open.
Okay, well, I will say this is, when we compared groups, we were kind of comparing, you know, apples to oranges, really large firms, medium-sized firms. And then Jake is a party of one with no other employees. I will say he's extremely likable. If you met him in person, you'd think, wow, this guy is great. But without any employees, even, you know, proofreading work, which would be a good idea, but I can't talk about it. So it's just, you have to recognize there's nobody else. And I guess I can't talk about the beds and things like that. So I get the process. I'm just really uncomfortable. I don't feel like I can talk and do a thorough job, but I guess, I don't know.
Well, I would just say hold on to that, because then at that point, when there is discussion of a contract, if it pertains to the contract, it could be discussed and brought into closed session. But yeah, we have to be careful of what reasons are available to be able to close something. So I want to make sure that's right now at this point we don't. I've got a couple hands up, so I want to give those folks an opportunity, and I apologize if I'm not calling you in a specific order that you raise your hands, but Councilmember Dodwell, I'll let you go.
Just real quickly, I have not seen any resume, any documentation that we received from this gentleman at all with what we had going on today. I knew we were doing interviews, but I also don't know who else was interviewed. Was anybody else interviewed besides this gentleman?
So there was one other party that was brought forth for interview.
Okay, but the subcommittee chose not to bring them forward to Admin and Public Works. Is that the case?
The outcome was to bring the one, Mr. Silverman. That was the outcome of it.
Okay. Will we be able to obtain any documentation that Mr. Silverman has provided to the committee back to us as council members so that we can review that prior to this going out to vote to the council as a whole? Is that going to be provided to the entire council?
Yeah, I think
at our next meeting?
I would ask City Administrator Cross. He's not here, but I think he can make sure that the council gets that information.
I think it's imperative that all council members have the ability to review his experience.
Okay, we'll make sure that he gets that. If Joe, we can make a note to get that forwarded, we'll do that.
Preferably this week if possible.
Yeah, follow through on that. So I've got a couple more hands up. Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I had my hand up before Ms. Edens even started speaking, and it was to make some of the points that she made from my own perspective. I did not participate in the preliminary discussions or the prior closed sessions and so forth, but it just feels mandatory to me. We have to talk about, we're not just talking about a firm, we're talking about, in Mr. Silverman's case, a person. And there are, there has to be a comfort level with him specifically. And it's really hard to reach consensus on those points without, candor. And for that reason and others, it just seems imperative. And for, of course, Ms. Eden's reasons, I think it's imperative for us to have, some sort of a closed session. And I don't want it to wait until, if this has been forwarded to council. It just seems more efficient to do it before it actually gets to council. And the whole council has to talk about it. But I had a question because I'm not clear. Is Mr. Silverman's firm our preliminary recommendation to council if we all approve it? Has everybody else been vetted and found wanting in some respect? And Mr. Silverman's firm, I don't have the agenda in front of me, so I don't remember the name of his firm, but is he the one that bubbled to the top? Or how did that did the process work itself to the point where you guys think he's the guy, or the subcommittee thinks he's the guy?
Yeah, based on, there was a meeting with the two folks that were presented, two organizations. So it came out to that Mr. Silverman would be the one that would be brought forth to this committee to hear from and evaluate. And to your point that you were saying, it would go to the council for the council then to evaluate and make that decision. So, the council would have the same ask that you have. And so certainly we can request Mr. Silverman to come to speak to the council as well, and make sure that the rest of the council hears what he has to say and what he has to present, as well as getting that information that was asked of to be forwarded to you and the rest of the council as well.
Okay, so it sounds as though it will be very late in the process before we ever get to talk candidly about this choice.
Well,
unfortunately, I mean, that's the law, so that's the law.
Yeah, again, you can be candid at any time, but we have to be within the confines of what the Sunshine Law states and what could be closed and not. And so when it comes to a contract matter, that certainly is a reason to justify going into closed session, and you could talk about contractual matters in a closed session, but the rest, other reasons may not have that kind of justification, as I received that information from the city attorney.
Okay, so I will yield the floor, but I do have part of this is my ignorance. I don't know exactly how we would, as a nuts and bolts practical matter, how we would actually drive a lobbyist or a lobbying firm. Who does it? Is it Mr. Cross? Is it the mayor? Is it the mayor pro tem? Is it, and how do we help him help us? Those are questions that maybe we can wait, but I think they need to be answered.
Yep.
For folks like myself, that everything I know about lobbyists is bad, to be honest. And you and I have had that conversation. I've come around more to your way of thinking, but I want everybody to be comfortable with the whole idea of a lobbyist.
Well, I think that's a good question, and it should be clarified as far as the roles go. And if the council feels like, hey, this is something that should be arranged between the city administrator and the lobbyist, and then we get that information, or we can ask Mr. Silverman to report directly to the council on a periodic basis of what matters are being brought up, and receive direction from the council. It's up to the council to determine that, so we can do that.
Okay, I'll let the other folks speak. Thanks a lot for your patience.
Oh, thank you. All right, Councilmember Bertolino, and then Councilmember Nye, and then Council.
Yeah, Joe, I kind of echo what both Lauren and Rob have brought up, and that is that tonight we were kind of presented with an up or down vote on one candidate, and we've had 15 minutes of vetting. That's not sufficient, and I'm a little concerned that we only had two firms that replied and were even interested in us. That worries me. Why weren't there more firms that wanted to do business with the city of Wildwood? The second thing is, are we picking Jake simply because out of the two, he appeared to be the best, or out of the all criteria that we had established in screening these firms, was he ticking off all the boxes and hit it out of the park? I didn't get the sense that the vetting on Jake prior to tonight answered those questions by saying, yes, we talked to firms A, B, and C, and here's our criteria, and here's how Jake scored on those. I didn't get any of that. I got the fact he's a good guy, smart kid. I can say kid at my age. But is it really the kind of lobbying person that we want to represent us in Jeff City. So I'd like to, Joe, I know you guys have put a lot of work into this, but I'd like to kind of put a halt to this point, not take a vote on this tonight, and let's get a clarification on this question of what we could talk about in closed session or not in closed session. And let's have another go at this at another meeting, because I'm very uncomfortable right now with just saying, yeah, let's advance Jake to the council, because they're going to ask the same questions we're asking ourselves tonight. We don't have answers for them.
Yeah, well, yeah, we could ask John to come back. I think he'll say the same thing he's told me, that again, if it's contractual, yes. But I think the difference between what we're used to dealing with is we deal with employee or hiring of employees, where that's different. You can do that. But here it is like having a discussion where, for example, if we were to hire a contractor that does, let's say street work, we talk about it openly, and that is it. So that's what John has told me. As far as the other point, I think that you mentioned hearing. I think that's fair to ask, and Ms. Edens is probably able to speak to what she feels. I can certainly speak to what I saw and feel from the conversation that I had with Mr. Silverman. So we could certainly do that if you want to have that, hear that feedback. I think that would be fair for you to hear what stood out in hearing from him.
And can you do that tonight?
I
Can
don't
you do that here?
Yeah, I don't have any objection to doing that. So Councilmember Edens, are you okay?
Well, I was just going to second the motion, because when it comes back, even if John says we can't do a closed session, we can still get the members of this committee, the RFP and other information about how that process went, his cover letters, his resume. I feel like he was set up to fail on the agenda tonight, whether you really want to like him, because you don't have the information in front of you. And yeah, we do things in the open for contractors, but for contractors, you also have a fiscal note. So a council member that's not crazy about a lobbyist may say, you know what, I'm crazy about it if I can get it for this much money, but not if it's, $400,000, and you don't even know the number he bid. That's not fair to us, and that's not fair to Jake. So I'm going to second the motion to postpone, and then that information needs to be provided. And I'm not gonna.
We don't have any contract to talk about when it comes to money, but that would.
We had a bid.
So yeah, I do remember that the other one was significantly higher than Mr. Silverman. So I think then let's get you the information that you need, and then if you want to then advance it at the next meeting, we could do that. I do want to let Councilmember Nyan speak. She's had her hand up.
That's okay. I was going to pretty much ask the same question Lauren just asked for clarification if this did move forward, which sounds like we're not going to this evening, but was on the cost, because that to me pays a huge part. If you're paying a person or you're paying a firm, and where's the cost benefit and all that, I don't know that I can vote on. I mean, and that's fine if we vote and then that gets decided later down the road, but I didn't know if when we decide it's like, yes, we're all in no matter what the cost.
No, voting tonight would not be voting to approve of Mr. Silverman to say we have a contract with him. It would mean bringing it to the council and then getting that information to the council to review and so forth, and to prepare the information so we have a contract that we could look at. So again, I'm just providing you the information I have. So that's, we can take it any direction we want to. Councilmember Brost.
Yeah, Joe, you just mentioned something that made me think. What did the council direct us to do?
So the council asked us to identify a lobbyist that the city can engage in. And I thought that's what we were going to do, is take it back to the council and then let the council make that decision.
Yeah, because I guess I would say I'm not opposed to having a very open discussion about anything. tonight, but I would say void of that, I don't feel we have enough information to, like, if someone's on council said, Larry, why did you vote to bring this person forward? I'd say, gosh, I don't know. I mean, we don't have the information. On one side, I'd say I'm okay as a one-person company. My company actually started out really big. There was 2 of us. So that problem, I don't. It's really the individual. I think he did okay answering questions and things like that. He's younger than Dave and I, so maybe he was a little nervous, but he seems like he's accomplished things. But I'd like to learn more about him. He could be, if he's I don't want to say a low-cost provider, he could be someone that could really be the best value for the city. So I don't want to discount it, but I just don't have enough information. And
So what we,
so that would,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think we're on the same page, and gathering the sentiment here, it's bringing it back at the next meeting, getting you that additional information, and perhaps City Administrator Cross intended to get it out. He has not been at City Hall since the start of this week due to illness. So I don't know, but we can defer that. Councilmember Dodwell, you had your hand up.
I was just going to perhaps recommend that instead of trying to figure out what we're voting on, if we just make a motion to move the position forward to the council as a whole with the documentation on the current consulting firm that the subcommittee has felt is best, with all the information that goes along with that, so that the council as a whole looks at all of that information at the same time and we have the same discussion, rather than just waiting. I think if we bring it back to us and then wait another couple of weeks to get it back to council, that's just kind of wasting time, guys, in my opinion. Let's put it out to all of council and make sure that everybody has all the appropriate information to review what the subcommittee did and the reasons for the recommendations in writing, or in a short little memo that just says this is why we're recommending this individual, just like we would on why we're recommending Tom, Dick, and Harry to do sidewalks this year. So I'm making a motion. That's okay.
Well, I think we did have a motion to postpone, if I recall correctly. So let's make sure, because I do think that motion did get a second, if I recall. And so I want to honor that motion. Okay. Who made that motion? Councilmember Edens, I think you made it, or?
Mr. Bertolino.
And who seconded it? Then was that?
I did.
Okay, got it. Looked around. So, we have that motion here. And I think that's both options, I think, are fair. It's kind of like whether we have it here or there. So if we can get you that information, let's make sure we've got everything down. Then we'll have a discussion then at that next meeting of the next meeting, if this motion passes. And certainly, can ask city attorney to see if there's any reason that would be allowed to have that discussion. But otherwise, you do have to have it in the open. So that sound like the makers of the motion, what you were intending?
Yes, say it again. Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll postpone. Is the motion to postpone to the next meeting? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think what you're intending, that during that time, the motion would include getting you the information, the responses to the RFQ. And then the city attorney will be at the next meeting to answer any questions.
I'd
Okay,
also like to say that if we had anybody that provided another alternative, that ought to be, at least their RFP or RFI should
Yes, we'll
be
send both.
provided as well.
They will include that.
Okay.
So I think that's, I think that's probably the next logical step at this point. And so, Councilmember Dodwell, I know you mentioned the other way too, of just kind of taking it to the city, but I think I'd feel better just kind of doing the postponement at this point. Just,
That's fine.
it seems like we'll take a vote, of course, since it is a motion. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we got unanimous. So I think we're on the same page, and we'll just deal with it in January. All right, so that concludes that item here. And so the next item is under Public Works for information. Rick, you added this item here, and I think it's an item that was brought up in Board of Public Safety too, right?
That's correct, Chair Garitano. This item was previously discussed at the Board of Public Safety meeting. And it's provided to you for information tonight in discussion if there's any questions relative to the topic. It pertains to an incident that occurred, an accident that occurred on Old State Road. If you're familiar with the area, there's a crosswalk that's located just south of Ridge Road. There was a young man on a bicycle who was attempting to cross Old State Road, and he was struck within the crosswalk, and fortunately was not seriously injured in the incident. Just for some clarity, the crosswalk involved was constructed, and Joe's very familiar with it. We had a project in 2017 where we extended sidewalks along Old State Road and onto Ridge Road, and the crosswalk was installed as part of that project that the city completed at that time. So I should also point out that St. Louis County does have jurisdiction here. Old State Road is a county maintained arterial roadway. So they maintain the roadway and the crosswalk. The sidewalk is actually the responsibility of the city of Wildwood to maintain. The road in this area has got a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. I believe the police indicated that speed was not considered a factor in the crash in their review and in their report. Department has looked at the location. We felt that the signing was adequate. It does meet the requirements that we follow for signing of the crosswalk. And I should point out that the sight distance and the visibility of the crosswalk appears to be adequate as well. Old State Road is basically flat in the horizontal and vertical alignment in that area. So that doesn't seem to have affected the incident directly. As I mentioned, fortunately, the bicyclist did not get seriously injured. I believe he fractured his ankle, but nonetheless, there's some concern there about the safety of the crosswalk. The father has been very active following the incident, has reached out to St. Louis County as well as the city, has been very strongly requesting that something be done to improve the safety of the crosswalk. We also found out in the aftermath that Vintage Grove subdivision, I think what I might do is share my screen if that's okay. So I can maybe provide you, let's see here. I'll try to pull up my memo if I can. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm not being totally prepared here. I wanted to pull up the graphics from a memorandum. So if you can see my screen, I assume you can. If you can't, please let me know.
No.
But I wanted to point out the location of the crosswalk immediately southwest of Ridge Road, and the subdivision on the north side is Vintage Grove subdivision. And we have come to determine that there are actually some kids that walk to Ridge Meadows School and cross using this crosswalk, and then follow down Ridge Road to Ridge Meadows Elementary School. So there are some parents that are concerned as well with regard to the safety of the crosswalk, and they have notified us as well. So I wanted to point that out to you. So following the incident, we have had a meeting with St. Louis County on November 22nd, I believe. We held the meeting in City Hall. We had County Council Member Harder in attendance with his administrative assistant, Ann Gassel, and we had the acting director with St. Louis County Department of Transportation, Stephanie Leon Streeter, in attendance, as well as City of Ellisville Mayor Mike Romerman and Ellisville City Administrator Bill Schwer. Steve Cross was there, as well as Captain Mundell and myself. The purpose of the meeting was really to look at the incident and the crosswalk and brainstorm and discuss potential improvements that might make the crosswalk more safe at this location. One of the things we are talking to the county about is the possibility of installing the rapid flashing beacons at this location. And I think many of you are probably aware we've done that elsewhere in Wildwood. And in fact, there is a crosswalk. I don't show it here, but there is a crosswalk immediately opposite of Ridge Meadows Elementary on Ridge Road where they've installed the rapid flashing beacon. So that's one of the things we're talking to the county about, and potentially developing a project to get that done, hopefully in fairly short fashion. I did provide some photographs in my memorandum as well, showing the crosswalk. The rapid flashing beacons, if they were installed, would be essentially installed on the existing poles below the signs, and they are activated by a push button that's installed on the posts by the pedestrian who desires to cross the road. So they do provide some enhancement of the safety. They draw the attention to the motorist, to the individual who's desiring to cross the road. And I think the county is agreeable to that being done. We just have to work out the specifics with regard to the cost and the procedure that we go about installing the rapid flashing beacons at that location. The indications that we've received from St. Louis County is they would be willing to split the cost of the installation with the city. So that's going to be the question on our part is, are we willing to spend upwards of $10,000, say, of a total of $20,000 to install the flashing lights at the location? Because at this point, our best estimate is it's going to cost about $20,000 to install those flashing lights at the crosswalk. Additional discussion at the meeting surrounded long-term improvements, and I think and we'll talk about this shortly. We do have a long-range plan to install a roundabout at Ridge Road and Old State Road. That project would include an enhanced crosswalk, presumably would make pedestrian crossings at that location more safe. We've applied for funding twice now for that improvement project and have not been successful. But certainly in the long term, getting that project funded would be a positive, would be favorable for pedestrian safety. And then more immediately, I think after the meeting, we have worked with the Ellisville Police, the Wildwood Precinct, to have installed LED radar signs, I believe in the southbound direction. Ellisville is maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the Ellisville installed them in the southbound direction. Wildwood installed them in the northbound direction, but we should have some LED radar signs installed and operating in the location of the crosswalk to try to slow traffic and encourage motorists to follow the 40 mile an hour speed limit at that location. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up. And again, the department is working on a plan to install the flashing lights, working with consultant right now to finalize that plan. We will submit it to St. Louis County for their review and essentially approval of the plan. And then we will proceed with finalizing a cost or potentially even getting bids to install the flashing beacons. So subsequent information regarding this may very well come back to you, hopefully as soon as next month. So at this point, I think I'll turn it back to you. If there's any questions that I can address, I'll do my best.
All right. And this again is just for information. right, Rick?
That's the intent at the moment. Councilmember Garitano, yes. Again, we are working on a plan, and I think there'll be further information coming forth to you at a later date.
All right, maybe before we open up questions, because I think some of the folks that were impacted by the incident were in Councilmember Hopper's ward, just give you a chance, Councilmember Hopper. I think you mentioned that you either had talked or gotten some information from folks. Do you want to have anything else to add that the committee might want to know?
Yeah, thank you. I would say, I wouldn't necessarily say pertinent or detailed information to add, but yeah, the residents over there received more than one message about the safety of crossing Old State and in particular this crosswalk. And I think I can probably speak for a lot of people that have driven Old State Road. Like, even if you are going the speed limit, where this crosswalk is, and really any crosswalk on Old State, it is as you kind of mentioned, arterial road. So people aren't really driving down there looking for someone to be crossing it. It just seems like a thoroughfare that you kind of go through and sort of barrel down, whether you're speeding or not. So I definitely get a lot of concerns about the safety there, and in particular, with regards to now it is multiple children cross at that crosswalk. So, we're talking the safety of a lot of folks who need to utilize that. So I think really anything that we could do that would help the safety in that area, and in particular those crosswalks across Old State, would be very beneficial, and I think very well received from the community, and providing a little bit of safer option for those that need to cross.
All right, thank you. All right, I got a hand up from Councilmember Bertolino, and you might even have something to add too, because you were in Board of Public Safety, so I know they talked about it.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And yes, we did last Thursday, and we heard from the residents again about their need for improved safety, and I'm all for it. I think Rick is doing a commendable job of trying to pull together the resources, and hope that acts quickly and we get some police flashing lights installed in there as soon as possible. I have one question though, Rick, to you. It was more of a curiosity question, but did we find out if Vintage Grove has bus service?
Mr. Polino, my understanding when I did speak to the principal of Ridge Meadows Elementary, and she was actually the one that contacted me and said, the folks there are using the crosswalk, they're concerned about it. And the question I asked her was exactly that. Do they have bus service? And she says that they do. They have an option to take the bus. They just prefer not to do it. And I don't know. I know the district did revise their policy for bus service this year, as we know, and they reduced it within a mile of the school. But I gather they must have considered the situation and made an exception, recognizing the concern with those kids crossing the crosswalk at that spot.
Mhm.
Yeah. That was the impression I got when we left the meeting last Thursday, that there was bus service available, and that for some reason, and there was one parent there who wanted to respond, but I didn't see any response for her. And maybe Nate, maybe you can follow up. I just think it's prudent, if there is bus service available, that's got to be the safest way to get the kids to school, rather than, and maybe it's a timing issue. Maybe the bus comes at dark 30 and they don't want to get the kids up there. Who knows? But if there is bus service, let's encourage the parents to utilize it instead of taking the risk of crossing Old State Road.
Thanks, Dave. All right, I don't see any other hands up, and it's a for information item. Oh, we got one more hand up, Councilmember Edens.
I just want to voice my support. I mean, it's in the grand scale of the municipal budget, it's worth the money to do it with all due haste for an electric crossing. I really think it is. If we can move it up sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't see any other hands up, but like Rick said, it's going to probably come back at some point. So we're going to get to the remaining two items, which are for action, and then we'll conclude our final Admin Public Works meeting for the year. So, all right, Rick, this one here, proposed projects for federal funding applications.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. This is another subject that we've discussed previously. Let me try to get my memo up. There it is. I think I'm just going to start with Old State Road. So we've discussed this pretty much every year at this time. For those of you that have been on the committee, East West Gateway is currently accepting applications for their 2022 round of federal funding. The program, the applications are due for the program on February 10th of next year. Again, they have two available programs, the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, or STP, and the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, which is called CMAQ. There's about $50 million available on the Missouri side of the St. Louis region for the STP program. The CMAQ is about half that, about 22 million. Under the STP program, which we've utilized quite a bit in previous years, I should point out that local roads and minor collector streets are not eligible for that funding. So it does eliminate a lot of projects potentially that we might do, but nonetheless, we do have a number of streets that are eligible for projects. Under the CMAQ program, projects must show that they contribute to emissions reduction. And the way you do that is through congestion reduction. That can be challenging because you can't reduce congestion by adding capacity. You have to do it in other ways. So it's fairly restrictive, the CMAQ project, in terms of projects that are eligible for funding. On both programs, a minimum 20% local match is required. However, I've mentioned previously, a higher local match will generally result in more favorable scoring. So we have taken that option in years past. So if you had time to look at the memorandum, you will see on it that essentially the projects are similar to last year's funding round. As you know, this committee recommended last year submittal of applications for Old State Road, as well as the two Route 100 projects. So Old State Road, I've included it on the memorandum, and I would be remiss if I didn't state that the incident more recently on the crosswalk had something to do with this. But I think it would be a good time to resubmit Old State Road again for funding. But I guess my recommendation is a little more nuanced in that I think that we should push St. Louis County again to be involved in this as they were in 2018. Last year, if you recall, the city of Wildwood submitted this application with Ellisville jointly. We were not successful. County denied to participate at that time. They didn't feel we would be successful, but quite frankly, if we can pull the county in, and especially if we can reduce our match to 50% by doing that, we will have a better shot, I think, of getting funded. So that's really my recommendation, is that we jointly submit an application with St. Louis County and Ellisville, the local match being 50%, not 80%. If we do that, our cost would be closer to $400,000, and our chances, I know, would be higher than they were at least last year. So that's the first project that we're recommending. I guess, Chair Garitano, if you want, I can go through all of them, and then we can come back and discuss them if you'd like, or if you want to do questions individually. I'll defer to your preference. If you'd like me to move on, I will do that.
I'll look for direction from the committee. Do you all want to go through all three, or do you want to talk through each one at a time? Any favorites? Councilmember Gross has got his hand up, so I'm going to let him go ahead and
I would just say, if maybe Rick, if you want to go through all of them and then go back and so.
That's fair. We'll do it that way then.
I would be glad to. I will move on if that's okay. So as was the case last year, I have Route 100, the two Route 100 improvement projects recommended, the J-turn project, as well as the left turn improvement projects on Route 100. The J-turns would be at, they would be installed at Pond Road, as well as at Route T or St. Albans Road. The J-turn project is about 2.85 million in total cost. The nuance here that I'm including is, if you recall, earlier this fall, we submitted for cost share funding through MoDOT's program for the Route 100 J-turn project. So the assumption with this recommendation is that that project has been funded. So we have the cost share approved at MoDOT. That was a 50-50 cost share. So what I'm recommending is then, and we can do this, is turn around and take our 50% share of the MoDOT program and submit that for federal funding. So my recommendation is that we do that at a 30% local match. So basically you're taking 30% of 50%, and our local match would be, if I did the math correctly, 427,500 basically. So that's the recommendation with the J-turn project. And the idea there is, again, if we can reduce the ask, the amount that we're asking, it'll help our scoring go up. So the last time we requested the full 80%, this time we're going to be asking for 30% of 50%. So a much lower amount of federal dollars. So I provided you the graphics in my memorandum as far as the J-turn locations, if you want to talk through or have any questions about that. This is the one at Pond Road. If you recall, there's the one for the westbound movement at Pond Road. Eastbound movement would actually use the 109 interchange for left turns, at least recommended concept. At Pond Road, at Route T, they have 2 J-turns, one on either side of St. Albans Road, to allow the left turn movements to occur.
Okay.
Moving on from that project, the Route 100 project, again, is similar. We have the 4 intersections where we are proposing turn lanes to be constructed. As with the J-turn project, we submitted the Route 100 left turn lane project for state funding under MoDOT's cost share program. So again, my recommendation is that we resubmit our 50% share. We're assuming that we're successful under the MoDOT cost share project. We're submit our 50% share for federal funding at a 30% local match. So it will reduce our local match to $382,500 for the left turn lane improvement project. So that's the recommendation there. It's a little different than previously done. And finally, the last project, and this was something new, the department would like to work towards resurfacing both Valley Road and Strecker Road. These were both last resurfaced in 2013. And at that time, we actually did submit a federal funding application, and we were successful at that time. Both Strecker and Valley are eligible for federal funding. So looking towards resurfacing those 2 roads, I'd like to submit an application for those 2 separate and for federal funding. And if we were successful, we would include some limited amount of stormwater drainage improvements, safety improvements, and possibly pedestrian improvements, such as sidewalk gaps where they might exist and would be feasible to complete. So that's the recommendation for Strecker and Valley. We'd recommend for those projects, starting with an 80-20 request, so that the city's portion would be a local match of 20%. I do not have costs for those 2 projects just yet. I tend to have a consultant work on that here in the next 4 to 6 weeks to finalize those numbers. So that's the essentially the 4 projects that I was recommending for consideration for this go round. And at this point, I guess I'll turn it over or turn it back to you for any questions that you may have.
All right. Well, thank you, Rick. And so you're looking for, these are all the projects that you're bringing forth to the committee with your recommendation. So it sounds like the easy path would be getting that recommendation of all these 4 projects to move forward for you to go ahead and apply at this point. So we're going to open up to see if you have any questions, but the only thing I would ask, if maybe you just add in there, is Rick, as far as the matches go, like, are these all accounted for in the budget, whether it's 2022 or in our 5-year plan? Are those, it's covered in there, or do you have to make adjustments?
Councilmember Gertron's a good question. So I don't believe we've added in our 5-year capital. None of these projects would be under our 2022 funding directly. We do have some money actually available under 2022 to do some engineering on Route 100. I forget the exact amount, it may be $100,000 or $75,000. So there's a little bit of money there. Old State and Ridge Road, I believe we do have it shown towards the end of our 5-year capital improvement program, but I don't believe there's any monies for 2022. But as I stated in the memorandum, most of these projects, the funding is usually out at least a couple, 3 years. So with the federal funding application, the first year that you can get any monies at all are 2024, and potentially you could do construction in 2025. So what we typically do is adjust as we go along the 5-year plan, and then when we get to the current year, we adjust accordingly.
Got it. All right. Well, then that alleviates any concern. You can build that into your plan, and we've got time before 2024 to do that. So, all right, I will open up to see if you have any questions. I think everyone's fairly familiar with the first 3. The only one that's new is just the resurfacing of Strecker and Valley. So do we have any questions on it, or folks want to? Okay, I got Councilmember Berlino.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Joe. Rick, go back if you would. You kind of lost me in a couple of turns here on your recommendation on the 100 J turns, no pun intended, about how this cost sharing is going to work. Would you walk through that one more time slowly for us old guys?
Sure. So we've, again, both the Route 100 J turn project and the Route 100 left turn project, we've submitted those applications to MoDOT already this fall. And those applications requested basically 50% of the cost. So our share is 50%. I've not heard back from MoDOT on either one of those just yet, but I'm expecting that we'll hear something shortly. Assuming that we are recommended for MoDOT funds on both of those projects, again, our share would be 50%. We turn around and submit that 50% share for federal funding. So instead of the full share, we submit 50% of the share, reduces the ask by half, obviously. But there is a local match on that 50% share. So we would submit a 30% local match on the 50%. So it reduces our obligation down quite a bit from what we previously did last year when we went 80-20. For both of those 2 projects for federal funding.
Am I the only one that's still reeling here? Anybody else? If everybody else has got it, I'll shut up.
So basically, instead of submitting the full 100% cost, you're submitting half the cost for federal funding.
But the term that I miss is we applied to MoDOT on a 50% cost share of that total program, right? And if we're successful with that, that means that the state's going to put up 50% and we're going to put up 50%, right?
Yes, we would, except I'm proposing that we turn around and ask for the federal government to pay for part of that 50%.
Right.
So the 50% that we committed to the state, we're going to say to the feds, here's the dollars that we're going to put up for this project through the matching with the Fed, with the state. Will you, federal government, will you kick in and take 30% of that or whatever it was we're going to take? If you'll take a portion of that, that way it reduces our 50% down to 30%.
Correct. Yeah.
That's it? Okay.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Now, is the state okay with that? We're kind of using our commitment. Sounds like we're mortgaging the same building twice, doesn't it?
They are okay with it. This is a rather new thing, and we have not done it at Wildwood, to my knowledge, I don't believe, but it is allowable, and both East West Gateway and MoDOT are aware of it. I gather other cities are doing it, so we would be remiss not to consider doing it.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
All right, Councilmember Edens.
Yes, I was just excited to see Strecker and Valley. When you mentioned some of the potential drainage improvements, is that alongside the road where the ditches and culverts kind of fill up, or is this pre-existing pipe structures and great box grates that would be redone? Because there are a couple places where it does kind of, you get water level with the road, and it can go over, especially if there's a fallen log in the ditch.
So yes, those would be the things we'd be looking for, where we knowingly have problems where either culverts are undersized or we lack ditches, we've got water crossing the center line of the road. It's not to say we want to put enclosed drainage on the entire route by any stretch,
Right.
but if we can identify specific problems that we're aware of that we can address at a relatively low cost, that would be the intent in my mind. And I'm sure there are some locations that we can address, but it's not to put enclosed drainage on the entire roadway by any stretch, because that would be cost prohibitive and require a lot of time and easements, frankly.
So if you have any spots, probably send Rick a note, and that way when they get started on it, they'll know which areas to look at.
And that would be fine. I think you've mentioned a few over the months, Councilmember Edens, but we'll certainly be open to any of those concerns.
All right, I don't see any other hands up, but I think my only comment would be is this is a nice package of projects here that cover multiple wards. I mean, I think easily 1, 6, 4, 2, 7, that benefits residents of 8. So I think this is a nice statement to make that, you know, we want to try to get some good work done in our city. So I don't see any other hands up, but certainly know how I feel. So Rick's looking for a recommendation. If you want to make a motion to approve the department's recommendation to submit for the 4 projects. Does that sound right to you, Rick?
No, that would be appreciated. The next step, if it's approved, would be to bring a resolution to the city council, which I wouldn't probably do till January or the second meeting in January. So it might be a bit.
Okay, so I did see Councilmember Brost put his hand up, so we'll make him make the motion. And I did see Councilmember Eden, so I do see a Councilmember Dodwell, but I'm just going to go with who I see first here. So Brost and Edens, you're making that motion. Any other questions on the motion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 You oppose or abstain? All right, the motion passes. All right, great. All right, and last one here, Rick. And this is the MoDOT agreement for the roundabout at 109 and Wild Horse Creek in Ward 1.
Okay, thank you, Chair Garitano. I'm assuming I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Is that correct?
I don't think you were sharing it before.
Okay.
Yeah.
None
That
of us have
explains a lot
seen your
then. I
screens at
apologize.
all tonight.
All right, I apologize for that. I'll get better next time. At any rate, this next item, council members, is relative to MoDOT's project to install a new roundabout at Route 109 and Wild Horse Creek Road and South Etherton Road. Actually, Route CC, if you're aware, is Wild Horse east of Route 109, but the roundabout at that location is being designed by MoDOT. They've completed their preliminary plans and are working on to acquire the necessary easements and right-of-way for that improvement project. They are anticipating a bid about a year from now for that project. So construction would occur primarily during 2023. And so it should be wrapped up in a couple years. So as part of their project development process, they typically require cities and counties that they're impacting to execute a municipal agreement between MoDOT and the municipality. And the intent is to really identify any concerns that might occur during the design and construction of the project and make sure they're addressed. So they have provided an agreement to us asking us to execute it on our end and return it to them. The primary purpose in my mind of the agreement, at least as it pertains to Wildwood, is to allow them to modify the western leg of the roundabout, which is Wild Horse Creek Road, and that is a Wildwood maintained roadway. So they will need to impact our road and that approach to build the roundabout. So I don't see any serious concerns, quite frankly, with this agreement. I should point out to you the construction of the roundabout is going to impact traffic handling during the project construction. What they're telling me is that they will want to close that leg of Wild Horse Creek Road, the western leg, during the project construction, but they don't expect that to last for much more than about 10 to 15 days. So maybe a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. And when they do that, they will keep one lane of traffic open. So the idea would be to let the locals utilize it, but they want to discourage any through traffic on that leg. So that's really the main impact directly to the city. Relative to traffic handling, they're saying right now that they will have to close South Etherton, the north leg, for about 6 weeks is the anticipated time frame to allow the project to be constructed. And during that period of time, I'm going to stress to them that we would prefer that they detour the traffic down Route CC to the east, northerly to what I would call Long Road into the valley, in lieu of potentially detouring it down Centaur Road up around Wild Horse Creek Road. So that's going to be my recommendation, that they avoid detouring it more directly on Centaur and Wild Horse Creek Road, but to keep that traffic on MoDOT's road. So that gives you an idea of what they're talking about relative to traffic handling. I really don't see any other major concerns with this agreement. Most of the language pertains in large part to relocation of city utilities. We just don't have any utilities. We could have some storm sewers, but we don't have any that I would even see to be impacted. So I don't see any real serious concern on our part with this agreement. I don't see any costs that would be directed our way by signing it. So I'm recommending that we move forward, but I will stipulate to you that I did forward this to City Attorney John Young. He has not provided me his comments back. So if he has any serious concerns that we need to address with MoDOT, we will take that up to MoDOT as well, probably prior to presenting this to the full city council for approval. So with that, I will turn it over to any questions you have. But again, the recommendation is to move forward with the execution of the municipal agreement with MoDOT for this project.
Hey, thank you, Rick. And a quick question, you mentioned about South Etherton Road, which we kind of had to deal with that closure that was prolonged, feels like a couple of years ago. But how does that affect that one neighborhood that's off of South Etherton Road? I think there's a subdivision right there that we're familiar with. Do they have to go down to Centaur?
That's a good question. As far as local access, I'd have to follow up with MoDOT on that specifically. I mean, obviously they can't just restrict folks from using their property. They've got to maintain local access. So I can find out a little further what they're thinking. My expectation would be they would probably still allow local access to use South Etherton, probably in a similar fashion. So it would be closed through traffic, but if you had reason to get in there as a local resident, you would be allowed to do it.
Well, I think too, if I recall, they do have a road that goes the other way, but the reason I remember is because they complained that tractor trailers were using it because of that road closure, if I recall, or something like that. So probably just something to remember that might come back.
Yeah, that's a good point, Councilmember Gaetano. Yeah, that has been a cut-through issue before, and certainly something we should keep an eye on.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, I see Councilmember Dodwell, you got your hand up.
I just wanted to ask, is there any way that we could force traffic off of 109 onto 100 at 100 so that we don't have, I mean, we've got people cutting up and down 109 every morning and every evening as they're cut through. So that's a lot of traffic that goes through there. Is there any way we can force that, or MoDOT can force that those individuals that do not live in that area or live in the city of Wildwood? I'm not sure how you would monitor that, but.
Councilmember Dodwell, we can certainly bring that up. There may be a possibility that they would be able to, MoDOT would be able to include some signage with the project to discourage that kind of non-local traffic. We actually, if you recall, maybe you're bringing it up because when we did the 109 work earlier, we had a sign down, I think, on 44 maybe or elsewhere discouraging trucks. So I'll bring that up.
Yeah.
I can bring that up and see if we can work that into the plans.
Yeah, if we could start there, because we've got semis and dump trucks and lots of workers that live in Eureka and Pacific and Arnold that go up and down that road.
All right, I don't see any other hands up, so I think if someone's willing to make a motion for Rick's recommendation, I know he would appreciate it. So Councilmember Dodwell, you have your hand up.
I'll make that motion.
All right, a second, I think I saw Councilmember Nyan, is that right? Okay, so this, again, this motion is Rick's recommendation for approval of the MoDOT municipal agreement to allow construction of the roundabout at 109 and CC and Wildhorse Creek Road. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Hey, anybody oppose or abstain? None? All right, and then that concludes all our for action items here. So we've been kind of adding some items in the not ready for action. So this is more of just stuff to come in the new year that we do want to continue to work through. So we will be visiting these items when they're ready. So just remember that. And then we're in miscellaneous. Anybody got anything from miscellaneous? Councilmember Edens.
Yeah, I was just hoping that we could have an update on the Strecker Road sidewalk process, easement acquisition. And my question is, if it's not looking like it's going to happen, anytime soon, for reasons maybe you can or cannot mention, can we go ahead and bite the bullet and do any lighted, crosswalks as well? I mean, that was part of the original plan, but with a greater improvement. But can we parcel it out to smaller safety improvements? How do I get the show on the road?
Well,
I agree.
I'd be glad to respond as best I can, if that's okay. So as far as that project goes, it did get pushed to the 2022 fiscal year. I don't know if you realize that in the budget. So the money to construct the project and I think acquire the easement did get pushed forward to 2022, but clearly with the efforts going on with the Department of Planning and the zoning changes, we have not been negotiating with the property owner relative to obtaining the easement we need. So essentially it's at a standstill right now, quite frankly. It is possible we could look to move forward if we wanted to put crosswalk lights at some of the crosswalks that are there. We have the money that's in the budget. We could conceivably split that out as a project and move forward and get that done. I don't think that would be there any reason we could not do that if the council wanted that to happen.
Even with the crosswalks, we still do not have a safe pathway for individuals to walk along the straightaway on Strecker. Also, the individuals that have purchased the property on the southbound side of Strecker in my ward have not completed any of the improvements that they were requested to improve, such as cutting down the tree within the barn itself, removing scrub brush, etc. No one has been living in that house since it was purchased. They did make sure they had the grass mowed, but we still have residents walking up and down Strecker Road with no sidewalk. So what do we as council members and staff need to do to be able to get those particular individuals who bought the property to sit down with us, walk through the steps that need to be taken, and we can come to some consensus on who pays for what, and we get it done. This has been let's see, I've lived here almost 30 years. We've been incorporated 25 years. It's been a request on the table for at least 20. And I know we got a lot of things going on, guys, but we also have a lot of speeding cars going up and down that road, even with the ability to install speed sensors and signage, etc. They're just still not necessarily paying attention to all that. So I'm just waiting for somebody to get hit.
All right, maybe Rick, do you want to come back with a plan as to maybe what you can and can't do or something? I don't know if you got all the answers right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I was going to suggest the same, that maybe if the council members would like it on the agenda for January, that may be the suggestions. We put this back on the agenda.
You want to do that,
Yeah,
Councilmember Dodwell or Councilmember Edens? Is that
Yeah.
related to it?
yeah, Rick, would that just include the potential to go ahead and move forward with the lighted crosswalks as an option? Just any sort of safety improvement now,
Mhm.
in short of the full one, because we really just can't keep waiting on property negotiations for everything. So would that
Are
be
you talking
included?
about the lighted crosswalks, like at the end of the northbound side by Stricker Woods, putting a crosswalk there so that they can come across from, Carrie Tebby's subdivision across to Stricker?
Our subdivisions? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not, yeah,
uh-huh.
I don't know the names of your subdivisions like I do.
I know
mine,
you
but I
don't.
think we're at the
It's-
same
it's Cares
spot.
Crossing,
Yeah,
but-
because when you come from Ellisville on that hill, it kind of hits you quicker than when you come in from the Wild Horse direction in terms of where that crosswalk is.
Yeah.
I see Director Vunich has his hand up, so maybe he's got a comment there for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I promised I would not say anything, but in response to the negotiations with the Marquardt, the Department of Planning, along with the city attorney, will be moving forward with all of those zoning petitions, 10 of them starting in January. So there will
Okay.
be some momentum building there, as well as some decisions that'll be coming to the city council through the early part of 2022. And my
Okay.
apologies on the delays. Obviously, there's a lot of factors in this, but certainly we understand the urgency. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Berlino, you got your hand up.
Yeah,
Is this
thanks.
related or is this a separate item?
A separate item.
Okay.
And Joe and I talked to Joe very briefly this afternoon about this, and it's simple matter is, has anybody in your wards brought up the request that the city have some sort of bulk leaf pickup? Or is that just a few folks in my ward who mentioned that? I'd say a couple.
Yeah.
I've had two.
It's on the agenda. What I'd like is it okay if I kind of pursue this with Rick and others and come up with maybe a recommendation at our next meeting about, is there anything the city can do in terms of providing that service at the, option of an individual homeowner that they can have it. And what I'm thinking of, can we go out to get recommendations from providers? Because I think Waste Management doesn't provide it. So that's the reason I was bringing it up. So if that's all I want to say, if you're okay with that, I'll kind of pursue it with Rick and bring it back at the next meeting.
Rick, what do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, thank you, Chair. We did have a meeting with Waste Connections. Steve Cross and I had a meeting last Friday, I believe, and we did bring the specific item up to them. And well, I was actually a little surprised because they did express some interest in maybe providing this service. So they are going to get back to us. We were expecting they will get some information back from Waste Connections. Hopefully, we can provide that to you in more detail. And there did seem to be some interest on their part to providing leaf collection as a separate service.
Thanks, Rick.
And we got a little bit of time now.
Yeah.
I guess we do.
Okay. Anything else under miscellaneous? All right. Well, did Councilmember Rambo, did you have your hand up, or was that just your hand moving to fix your camera?
No, I did not.
Okay, I'm very sensitive about you because you always say I don't call on you. So
Well, you don't, but that's all right.
you and Larry, I always got to watch out for you two. So it's Ward 1 and 6, Western guys. So I just want to say it is the last meeting of the year, and thanks so much. I think we do a lot of great work. And, just even today with all these projects that we're looking at, it's just amazing how much if it gets that funding can happen. So great to have a meeting. So I want to just wish you all the very best this holiday season. Of course, I'll probably see you all at the next council meeting. And thanks to our special guest, Mr. Vunich. I'm sure he probably would love to say that he had so much fun, probably more fun than planning in parks, but I won't. All right. Well, glad to have you and come back anytime. You're always welcome. So that's all I've got on the miscellaneous. Anybody else have anything else? All right. Anybody want to adjourn? Motion made by Councilmember Bertolino, seconded by Hopper. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Have a good evening and we'll see each other soon.
Thanks, everyone.